Hey, Mark Steele fans, welcome to Mind of Steel, the internet's exclusive fan podcast dedicated to the works and thought of Britain's most ludicrous conspiracy theorist, Mark Steele. And if you're still paying attention, it means you too must be a Mark Steele fan. And so we're going to have an awful lot of fun finding out what Mark has been doing recently, because I'm sure, being a towering intellect that he is, it's very sensible and not going to lead to some kind of personal self-destruction or court defeat or some other embarrassment, because that wouldn't happen, would it? So let's join Mark on a little drive through the city of Newcastle.
So we're off to Newcastle today to talk about a mast that was installed in Hazelrig illegally. So it was knocked back by the local council. They actually knocked it back, and then the next minute, they've just put it up. So three have just put it up. They've just put it up.
Mark is apparently concerned with a recently constructed phone mast in the village of Hazelrig, which is in approximately the area where Mark lives. Unfortunately, the construction company that built it put it 18 metres away from its desired location, the location it was approved to be built, which unfortunately means it is technically an illegally erected mast, but not at all for the reasons that Mark is complaining about. The end result probably is that the telecom company will have to reapply for planning permission. That planning permission will be granted, and the formerly illegal mast will get the council's blessing, and everyone can go about their business and happily receive and make phone calls, which is, I guess, what we all want, isn't it? Maybe not what everybody wants, because Mark is still quite confused as to the purpose of what these phone masts are for. Here, for example, he's pointing to one outside a hospital and wondering out loud, why is it that somebody who is in the hospital might want to make use of one of these strange machines?
RVI University, RVI's infirmary, that's a hospital. And why would you want a hospital near to one of these? I mean, look at that monster. Absolutely monstrous. Now, they do take the best. I mean, look at it.
What possible use could a person in a hospital have for one of these tall, pointy death machines that Mark seems to be afraid of?
No one of the people are ill. I mean, look at these transmitters. So you've got cameras, transmitters. Are these people just thick, or they just want to increase the temperature in the city? I mean, unbelievable. Yeah, look at this. Look, yeah. Within a couple of yards, you've got transmitters all over. So on the street lights, there's another one there. I mean, come on. And this is supposed to be the university. What are they going to do? Cook them all to death.
What are you going to do? I believe that's how they talk, where Mark comes from. But Mark actually believes that global warming is caused by the presence of radio transmitters in an urban environment. He thinks that's what's causing the temperatures to rise. But he doesn't just think that, he thinks literally that the presence of these radio transmitters in the city are going to cook people to death, that it's going to cause people to be heated up to such an extent that they literally die. That's actually what Mark believes. He's not being poetic or exaggerating for some kind of lyrical purpose. No, that is his actual belief.
Yeah. I mean, the word warned, it gives you cancer. Did you not know? And then everybody gets sick, nobody pays their rates, and the council go bankrupt. It's quite a clever trick when you think about it. You just work on the no, unless they bring a load of immigrants in, that's right. And then they just don't do anything, you just put them in hotels.
Those immigrants, that's why we've got the 5G, isn't it? It's because the council wants to put the immigrants into motels so that the council will be bankrupted. No, wait, Mark, can you explain? I'm not getting this.
So they put them in hotels, not allowed to work, right? So that's another massive burden on the council. Then the council gets into loads and loads of debt. then they go bankrupt, and I wonder who owns the debt. Well, you see, I've got a fix for that. Because this was asymmetrical warfare, right, guess what? They'll not be getting paid.
It's genius. It's like one of those elaborate contraptions you'd build in the game of Mousetrap. One thing so clearly leads on to another. And who's doing this? Why, it's the council doing it to themselves so they get bankrupted by not being paid by the people who they are importing to put in the motels, but the 5G doesn't kill them, it only kills everyone else. See, it makes perfect sense when you think about it, and it's a wonder why nobody is listening to Mark Steele, because everything he says has this sheen of quality thinking, almost professorial. It's a real wonder how the rest of the world doesn't take him more seriously.
Some idiot driving an electric car there, some crackpot, right, obviously lunatic, doesn't mind sitting on top of an electric motor and sterilising themselves, right, and giving themselves cancer. Just didn't care, do they? And they just stick this and they rear on top of the, I mean, look at this, man. It's like...
Well, don't we all hate drivers of electric cars with their relatively simple drivetrains, their lack of pollution, their high rates of acceleration, their anti-theft systems, their sat-navs and their autopilots? What a disgusting invention that we should all have the greatest derision for the sort of scumbags who would drive around a city in one of those. Absolute nutters. Thanks for pointing that out, Mark Steele. But the thing we all need to do, according to Mark Steele, is to drive in our four-wheel drives around the city with one hand on the steering wheel as the other hand carries a cell phone to make your pointless internet blogs that nobody except me will watch. And now you, that's what we all need to do to keep the city safe. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for pointing that out.
Newcastle surveillance city, giving everybody cancer. Well done, Gateshead and Newcastle Council, for your ultra-low emission lethality death grid. And
what is an ultra-low emission lethality death grid? Well, actually, Mark is referring to an ultra-low emission zone, which is just a city ordinance that prevents people from operating polluting vehicles in certain areas. It's actually not called the ultra-low emission zone in Newcastle where he's driving. It's called the clean air zone, but it's basically the same thing. You can't drive your stinky old diesel van here unless you're prepared to pay a small fee every day. I think in London it's about £12. In Newcastle it might be slightly less. The important thing is that it's a very sensible city rule designed to stop people creating pollution. But in the upside down, back to front, topsy-turvy, wibbly-wobbly, crazy, wazy, timey-wimey world of Mark Steele, everything is back to front. And the thing that's going to give you cancer is not breathing in the polluted air that belches out of the tailpipe of whatever the hell it is he seems to be driving in this video.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. When are we going to have to arrest you before you kill anybody else? I mean, they're all planning mass murder.
And how are they going to murder us all? Well, with one of these, which if you can see past Mark's shaky handheld footage,
I mean, look at that.
I think it's a camera.
Oh. What they're doing in here, it's like the Bank of England. So we've got all of this... Oh, Neil. All right. We're just checking up on the Chinese technology here, the spying tech going straight back to China. Oh, watch, look at it. The spying tech is going straight back to China.
I could just imagine what the People's Republic of China will be thinking now as one of their crack camera operators stares out into a plaza in Newcastle town centre, seeing Mark's curmudgeon-y face and the dim-witted followers who seem to be glomming onto him. What will they be thinking? He's foiled our plan, our dastardly plan to put cameras on the sides of buildings.
See, look at it. Are they? Well, you just back. What?
We'll never know if Mark set foot inside that council building, with its Chinese cameras and hostile council workers. But from what I can tell, the Hazelrig transmitter mast has not been scheduled for destruction, so perhaps Mark's persuasive words didn't have quite the effect that he had hoped. But don't worry, because there's one organisation in British politics that takes Mark's words very seriously, and I'm thinking of Britain's leading defence organisation, Mi5, our equivalent of the FBI. They're the people who keep us safe against terrorist threats and even worse things that my puny brain couldn't possibly imagine. And Mark's got their phone number, and let's have a listen to a little phone call that he's had with the Mi5 tip line.
Yes, I'd like to report a terrorist attack on the country.
When will that take place?
I'm not exactly sure the timelines, but it's going to be pre-225, I believe. I think it's something that's been in the planning for quite a number of years.
Mark is ringing Mi5 to tip them off about an impending terrorist threat. Unfortunately for Mark, he doesn't know when this terrorist threat is going to happen, who's doing it, how it's going to be done, or really actually any factual detail at all about the so-called terrorist threat, which, as you can imagine, causes a little bit of frustration to the operator.
So, how do you know this information?
What happened? I came across some extremely concerning technology that had been installed in streetlights by basically when we're tracked through. One of the strategic directors at a local authority he had a couple of businesses that were in properties in London that were owned by the Chinese defence industry.
Good question. I mean, the guy goes straight to the point. How do you know what this threat is? And Mark's answer is pure waffle. He can't actually answer the question at all because he doesn't know. Mark, as we've established, doesn't really know anything about defence technology, radio systems, electronics, or any of the things that he likes to pontificate about on his self-published internet videos. Mark doesn't actually know anything, and this guy can see right through him.
So, in terms of your background, you said that you're a weapons expert. Do you mind providing me with some more information about that?
What actually happened, I worked on electronic weapons in the 80s, okay, at a facility. One of the things where people tell you that non-ionizing radiation can't be very harmful is a tool. It's not correct, okay. Directional weapon systems, as Havana syndrome, embassy staff in Havana would know only too well. They suffered major physiological damage from these directional weapon systems, mainly radar for intelligence gathering. However, if you focus the energy in air.
We've established previously that Mark is not a weapons expert, and his experience at the electronic weapons facility may have been that of being a janitor or a fitter or some low-level worker who didn't have any kind of scientific responsibility at all for the process, if indeed he ever worked anywhere in the defence industry. And we know that he couldn't have done anything like that since in the 90s he got in trouble for accidentally shooting a teenager in the head. And after that, there's absolutely no way he would have passed any kind of screening or clearance required by the Ministry of Defence. So what Mark is telling this Mi5 operative is a complete and utter lie. But you don't need to know anything about Mark to know that he's lying, because he just waffles as soon as the question is asked.
Okay, so that's all information you've already given me. So what I'm going to do now is we'll probably move to close the call now. If there's anything that you wish to add, you can email it to us as well.
Okay.
Via our website. There is a contact page there. You put your details into that. So I'm now going to write this up and send it on to the relevant team.
Okay.
So at this stage, thank you very much for your call, Mark. I do appreciate that.
No
And
bother.
the time to actually tell us.
Thanks very much. Cheers now. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
I think this is the most beautiful way of shutting down a conspiracy theorist, because Mark thinks he's being listened to. He thinks that the guy's actually going to enter Mark's ludicrous complaint into the British military crime computer and perhaps send a telegram to the Prime Minister so that he can dispatch the Coldstream Guards so that they shut down 5G and stop this bizarre plot to bring immigrants into motels in Gateshead. Or like Mark thinks he's communicated an existential risk to the last loyal part of the British government. But the truth is, we're all laughing at him. We all know that he's talking rubbish. Everyone is in on the joke, except for Mark.
Well, that's a bit better than contact the Metropolitan Police, isn't it? So you see, if you talk to these guys, now you've got to remember, that chap will have Mi5 family, friends, he's probably had the shot himself. I'm being pretty serious. I know what I'm talking about, and unfortunately, they just cannot run away from this issue anymore.
Yes, Mark, I think you've really made a connection to that chap. Perhaps you'll start hanging out and sharing secret tips via a dead drop in the middle of the night. And one of you can perhaps adopt a spy persona and a husky voice. It's all going to happen. It's all going to come true, isn't it, Mark? Thanks to this tip-off. I find it amusing as well because everyone else can see that the guy was completely unimpressed by Mark's nonsense, and the only place that report will be filed is perhaps with the local police for as a complaint against making crank calls to the Mi5 tip-off line. I think we all owe Mark a big thank you for the wisdom he's shared with us today, like the fact that global warming is caused by tiny radio transmitters and not pollution and the overabundance of carbon dioxide from petrol vehicles. Mark's put that to rest. Mark's also taught us so much about the dangers of electric vehicles with their motors apparently under the seat. Well, who knew? Apparently Mark did. And who could forget the ultra-low emission kill grid that's no doubt giving us cancer right away. I'll just be popping off to the hospital for my checkup, except no, because the hospital, like the one that Mark Steele pointed to, probably also has a 5G transmitter outside of it. Where can we go? Nowhere. I'll just toddle off and die. But if I don't die within the next few weeks, I'll be sure to record another one of these little updates so that you can also know what's going on inside the mind of Steele.